All right. Well, so like I said, view source.codes is what this is based on, but I'm going to skip the first hour, and I'm going to give a different presentation, just a high level, about what this is, and I'm going to demonstrate it. And then that leaves us lots of time for you to dig into the exercises from view source.codes. So I'm just going to get started. So my name's Brian, and I'm the webmaster at begin.com. I'm trying to bring back the term webmaster, so I'm using that a lot right now. I'm actually born and raised in Vancouver, which is kind of neat to be here doing this, because normally I'm not doing it here. Who's from Vancouver here? Right on. OK, well, you know how great it is. It's neat to see so many people share our city from abroad on an actually sunny day. So like I've done some things I'm not super proud of. I've done other things I am super proud of. And my work on the PhoneGap project led to this thing called Apache Cordova. And if you're from Vancouver, you probably recognize that street name. That's where I was living when we did the donation to Apache. So it seemed like an appropriate name. I don't give a shit about that stuff anymore, though. I'm stoked about functions, and in particular, Lambda functions. When we built PhoneGap, a big part of its success was due to the fact that we had a compiler running in the cloud. And you could upload code to this thing, and it would compile for iOS and Android and everything. And that got quite successful. And there were literally millions of users, which led to hundreds of servers and lots of shards of databases. And I didn't know 100% what I wanted to do after that moment, but I knew I didn't want to do that again. Ever again. And when I left Adobe, and just sort of shining on the hill was this new idea of serverless and these Lambda functions. And I started to really dig into that concept. Early Lambda functions were extremely limited. They would only execute for a few seconds. They would only have a couple hundred megs of memory. And that actually led to some really interesting new patterns. In order to squeeze the most performance out of these things, you had to keep them small, and you had to parallelize them, and you had to keep them stateless. This led to different architectural patterns, which has led to a different way of thinking about our apps. In this world, the function is the unit of deployment, not your entire application. And this leads to a whole new set of resiliency properties that I've never seen before. So when we were building out our first version of begin.com, it was a bot for Slack, and so it had to be real-time, it had to be fast. And we discovered that it had a problem in where it was effectively leaking data to people that shouldn't see it in an edge case. And so my co-founder and I got freaked out, and we're like, oh my God, we got to shut this thing off, like right now. And I was like, yeah. And then it dawned on us that this thing was 300 Lambda functions, and we didn't really have a way to shut it off. And I've never experienced that in my entire career in software before. Usually, the default is shutting the thing off. This was a system that was so resilient that it was actually kind of difficult. We've since built a kill switch idea into this, but it's a new way of thinking about your application. Because you're deploying these single little slices of functions, you can deploy one of them, or you can deploy all of them. And when you deploy all of them, you can deploy them in parallel, which means that you get this massive efficiency boost. Then sometimes it comes up about using cloud-native containers. This is sort of, to me, just a faster horse. The idea is the function. The abstraction is a function, not a server. The idea of a server was just because we used to have servers, and then we had VMs, which used that metaphor. Later, we had faster VMs, which are containers. This isn't what we're doing anymore. This isn't what we're thinking about. We can put that metaphor aside and just think about these tiny slices of compute. And because we're thinking about these tiny slices of compute, we get a whole bunch of other benefits. Almost as bad as the whole containers idea is putting your app in a single function. And I know this from personal experience. This is the first thing everybody tries. They spin up a Lambda, they put it behind a proxy, and then they put an Express app inside of that thing. It works, and it can work. But the problem with this approach is that that is the fastest your app will ever be. So if you are building a monolithic function or a monolithic app, it grows with time. And as it grows, it gets bigger. And as it gets bigger, it takes longer to deploy, and it takes longer for the cold start to start up. And so it just gets worse and worse and worse with time. So this is an anti-pattern in the serverless world. And it's a big ask, because we're talking about changing the core abstraction of our app. But as a benefit, we get resiliency and speed. So everybody talks about this part, 100% utilization. You only pay for what you use in this world when we're paying for 100 millisecond slices of compute. And it's pretty nice. My Amazon bill is very low. And I'm not thinking about over-provisioning capacity. The enterprise, in particular, I think, sees this as a benefit more than maybe the average user that's in the free tier. I know at Adobe, we were over-provisioning in the order of millions of dollars worth of capacity in case of a spiky event. And this is pretty normal in big enterprises. So in this world of Lambda, we don't have that problem anymore. The only problem that we have is that we give things confusing names. And in this case, we call it 100% utilization, which is a confusing name for just focusing on what you use. The real benefit to me is that you were just focusing on your business value. So we're no longer building for the infrastructure that we're running on. We're not thinking about pods or nodes or containers or VMs or instances or auto scaling. All that goes away. Now we're just writing code for our app. And that turns out to be a huge productivity boost unto itself. When we're faster, that means we have a better lead time to production, which is a nice way of saying that we had a better chance of fixing our bug or finding product market fit. This is something that most people don't even really think about, but serverless apps have a better security model because you have this slice of compute that just goes away. There's no ports to scan. This is not a thing that has uptime. It just disappears after the request is over, and so there's really nothing to worry about there, which is kind of nice. So functions as a serverless or service to me are the best in class of the different ways of approaching serverless. You get fixed costs, you get faster iterations, you get better security. But again, the major key to me is that these functions are just plain faster to deploy. So Arc is the tool that we're going to use for doing deployments. There's a few other tools that are out there that exist. I recommend checking them out. Arc's the fastest. I stand by that statement. And if it isn't, open a bug and I'll fix that. So what Arc is, it's cloud functions based. It's Lambda first class. It's Node first class. They're vanilla Node apps. You can run an Arc app as an HTTP server and publish it to Heroku if you wanted to, but you don't want to. And it's just a monorepo of independent functions. Oh, and it's open source and open governance with the JS Foundation, although I'm not sure what the story is with that now. Maybe it's the Node plus JS Foundation. So just to be super clear, what Arc is not. So it's not Kubernetes, it's not VMs, it's not containers. And it is also not multi-cloud, but it is vendor neutral. This is a topic that comes up a lot. I think it is possible to probably port Arc to another cloud, but I don't. Hey, how's it going, guys? I don't think any of the other clouds are suitable for this type of app just yet. Another thing to note, this is not lift and shift, so you're not running a Rails app in a Lambda. I mean, you probably could, but you don't want to do that. It would be really slow. So this is a brand new way of thinking about things. And I keep alluding to this, but so why are these little things such a big deal? Well, deploying one function usually takes a couple seconds. And that means if you deploy all of them in parallel, that your builds can happen within a few seconds to a minute. This is with zero downtime, and it will instantly auto-scale up after that. This is a really big difference for your development iteration speed. This is probably the big key for Arc. So all the time's faster, runtime's faster, bug resolution's easier. Great. I think this is worth exploring. These seem like benefits that you hear for every different type of programming solution. It's faster, it's easier, it's more secure. So I'm not just going to talk about it, I'm going to show you. I'm not going to show you that, though. How's that read from the back? Is that all right? OK. OK, so I'm going to go to my desktop. And I'm going to make a directory. I think in the workshop, we call it Arc Workshop. So just to stick with my own theme, I'll try that. And we'll jump into Arc Workshop. And I'm going to npm init. So this just creates a package JSON file. And I'm going to npm install architect workflows. You don't have to follow along just now if you don't want to. If you just want to watch this, it's totally cool. We're going to do some workshop-y time after. This takes a minute. It's NPM. Some smartass will tell me I should use yarn later. And that's totally fine. We should try it out. OK, so there's nothing in here. This is just empty directory. I'm going to touch a .arc file. So in the sort of tradition of Unix, we wanted to have our own RC file, kind of like bash RC or vim RC. So in our world, it was architect run commands, ARC. And in an ARC file, we've got a namespace of an app. And so I'll just call this workshop. And I'm going to give it a single route. So these bits that start with an @ sign are sections. And stuff that comes after turns into infrastructure, roughly. It also supports comments, which, MPX create is going to read that ARC file. It's going to generate a function locally. It's going to generate 2 functions remotely, 2 API gateway instances, 2 session tables, an IAM role. It's going to wire it all up, and it's going to deploy the whole works. The reason we do 2 of everything is because ARC comes with baked-in staging production. So this is not a secondary thought. This is like a first-class consideration in the framework. You kind of want that as a thing. Everybody's worked on the dev team where you set up a staging, you set up a production, and they drift over time, and then eventually this becomes a huge source of bugs. And so when we're working from a manifest file, the infrastructure should just be immutable and always available and identical between the 2 environments. This is the slowest part. This usually takes a couple minutes. But once this is done, subsequent deploys to those functions is as fast as deploying a static website. I actually found a way to speed this up, but I don't know how much I like it. So as we're walking through the ARC file, reading instructions, if it sees something that already exists, it skips over it. So you can run and rerun create without worrying about clobbering yourself. So we just deployed a brand new API gateway for this staging URL. And you can see it says hello world. That's pretty exciting. And let's take a look at that code. So this generated this source folder with this HTML get index. And let's just focus on that code by itself. Arc gives you this helper situation called architect functions. You don't have to use that if you don't want to. So it occurred to me the other day that someone felt that this was heavy-handed. So we'll just do this as a regular Lambda function. If you want, I don't know what else to say. I know HTML. OK, so this is just like a regular Lambda function. We're going to run MPX Deploy. So MPX is kind of it's a monitor bug. Usually that bar goes away. So, there we go. We just deployed an update to that function. That was kind of slow at 2 seconds, but I guess it is conference Wi-Fi. If we want to upgrade that function to production, we add this environment variable, arc deploy. And the reason we did that was because it's kind of hard to type. So you think about it before you do it. Oops. So you'll see this is a totally separate, completely its own API gateway that's separate from the staging one. So we can do development, and stage up our stuff. Maybe it doesn't seem like such a big deal right now, but once you get to the 200-300 function range, it becomes pretty nice. So this was just a naked Lambda function, just sending HTML back, but we kind of added this nicer middleware sort of situation. So you can write Express-like apps, do things like this. Or maybe I want to log the request and then call next. Maybe down here, just for fun, we'll also put the request inside the HTML, just so we could look at it. We'll deploy that change. Great. Oops. So this is staging. No. Right. Right. It's like the poor man's debugger. Great. Good. So we can see the request here. And if we go into the console, in the AWS console, we could look in CloudWatch logs and see it logging there. CloudWatch captures all the console log statements, but it's kind of a pain. It's easier just to work locally. And we can go and see our function running on localhost. And because it loaded this, it should have logged. It didn't. Terrible demo, Brian. Huh. Oh, I know why. OK, so I have this log that's doing nothing. And I'm going to put it in front of this route. And I'll start the sandbox there. If we load it, go back, we can see, yeah, it did log the request here. The request comes back as like a standard Node request where it's got, path and whatever, body and parameters and query and all that other good stuff. So that's one route. We're just looking at one single HTML route. Let's start building out our application to do something a little more serious. So let's add a counter. So we'll do post count. We'll run MPX create again. And so this is going to read that ARC file. It's going to know that it's already created index. And so it's going to skip over creating that. It's going to see, oh, there's this new post count. So it's going to create 2 Lambda functions for that. And then it's going to create the route for that in API gateway. It's going to wire up all the IAM permissions, and then it will deploy the whole mess to staging and production for the new route. Then we can modify that route, and we'll take a look at the session next. So right now, Arc is pretty focused from setting up function types in these pragma at command kind of things inside that Arc file. And we're just looking at HTML functions, but if you feel like skipping ahead a little, you can see that we support all different kinds of content types. We support SNS events, DynamoDB tables, DynamoDB indexes, queues, scheduled functions. We even make it super easy to set up a Slack bot. That was actually our original use case. OK, so that deployed. And we can check out the action of that by adding a form here. So I'm going to collapse this. I'm going to get rid of this log middleware. I don't really need it right now. But I thought it'd be neat to show it to you. It's like a fruit fly flying at my face. OK, so we're going to add an HTML form to this. And it's going to post to staging count. And we're just going to add a button to it that says 1UP. So this is, pretty simple stuff. Not doing a whole lot. We'll deploy that. So MPX Deploy will deploy all the Lambdas in parallel and try and do it as fast as it can. It gets throttled a little bit by Amazon, so it'll slow as you add more Lambdas, but the begin.com source code base is 300 Lambdas, and it still deploys in sub 1 minute for us. OK, cool. So we have a 1UP button. If I click this, everything blows up. I don't know why. So it's like posting to staging/count. And it's saying missing authentication token. Oh, I know why. It's because I actually just did a GET request. So I'm going to deploy that. Great. Go back, refresh this little buddy. So let's just inspect it and make sure that we've got our form method equals post. If I post, it just reloaded and came back. Actually, let's look at the network so you can see that's what happened. Click it, and you can see we did a 302 redirect back home. So let's take a look at that post Lambda. So by default, things that accept a post will just redirect back home. Now, you might have noticed in this one, I just hard-coded, let me clear this up. I just hard-coded staging count. And that's because Lambda, or an API gateway, creates these annoying URLs where you get like /staging and /production at the end. So we have a helper for that on request, which is request.url. And I can just say count, and it'll automatically do the correct thing based on its location. So if this Lambda is running in production, then it'll return staging/count. Or sorry, production/count. If it's running staging, it'll return staging/count. You don't need to use this once you set up DNS. This problem goes away, but this is just for while you're getting going. So that thing posts here, and then this thing just redirects back, which is kind of not that exciting. So let's create a variable called count, and count will equal request.session.count, or it'll equal 0, either or. And then we're going to add 1 to count, and then right here we'll write it to the session. So a request comes in, we're going to look for count on that session. If it's not around, we'll just have it at 0, and then we'll increment it, and then we'll relocate back home. To see that the session's getting passed around, we'll display that count variable in our template. Okay. Cool. Oops, not I. Cool. Okay, and we'll deploy that whole thing. Great. It should say 0. Cool. Let's see if we increment. And if I reload the page, still 1. Hit this, should increment. Okay, so we have session state across 2 stateless lambdas. That's pretty fun. Good way to get going. Probably just want to like close the loop on that and allow ourselves to clear the session. So let's clear. We'll generate a new function. Don't have to worry about anything else. It only creates if it doesn't already exist, so it's totally safe to just keep running this npx create over and over again. Sometimes you will see, you'll get rate limited by Amazon, and that's totally normal and it's okay. It'll send a big ugly error and it'll say you've been throttled. And this just means that you haven't been giving Amazon enough of your money. And they're happy to help you with that. You just contact support and they'll take as much of it as you've got. I wish I was kidding, but it's actually true. You can totally buy concurrency. And bigger companies do. Does that make sense? So this is going to slowly build this out. This is the worst part for sure, waiting for this to finish creating stuff. We have a new branch that I just started teasing today where I speed this up by a factor of 4. And routes are dynamic by content type, but figuring that out has been a a multi-year journey. Still polishing that rock. I'm sorry, I didn't hear you, bud. This is a really common question. Yeah, we haven't built this in, but you can do that. Like, there's nothing stopping you from changing the execution role on a per Lambda basis. But that's exercise for the developer. I wouldn't be able to predict what roles you want or how you would want to lock it down. But that is something that we're definitely looking at making easier inside of Arc, if that makes sense. And if you want, I can show you how I've done it for some of our Lambdas. It's not that hard. So, okay, so we generated this new function post clear. I'm just going to go back to the index, and I'm going to add another form. It's getting kind of crowded on this form. We might want to start cleaning this up, but we'll just keep being maniacs for a little bit longer. So this is going to post a clear. We'll call this clear. And inside of post clear, all we'll do is overwrite the session to be nothing. That's it. I'll deploy that. I like how they've got the like old-timey bell on the door out there. Feels like I'm running a convenience store for Lambda programming. Okay, so clear button showing up. Post goes back to 0. Neat. If I hit 1, goes up. So, you know, this isn't that impressive, but you're now interacting with a session state across stateless Lambdas. So we can start building on these blocks to build something a little more interesting. But first, I think this is probably a good spot for folks to jump into these beginning exercises. And so if you go to viewsource.codes, intro to web, there's a set of exercises there that kind of leads you down this path. And I want to help you get something deployed today before our 2 hours is up. And we've only got an hour left. So jump over here and start following this. If you're not doing any coding, that's totally cool. I'm going to just float around and help people and answer questions. And if you have any questions, you know, fire away. That sound good? Yeah? Sweet. Okay. Let me see if we're going to get you back to the starting point there. Oh, something to note. This is a little bit old. You don't need to set up package JSON anymore. You can just do MPX and then the name of the command that you're interested in. Actually, let me just show you. So once you install Arc Workflows, if you run MPX help, it gives you this menu. These are all the commands that you can run. It's a little better than like setting up global binaries. So like, here's how you deploy. And it's just MPX deploy. You could set up, when we originally did this, we did everything as npm run commands, but you don't need to do that anymore now that MPX is around. Some people have asked that we do a global CLI binary, but those create a lot of problems. And so this keeps your project scoped to one version of Arc instead of us asking you to globally install Arc and then have different projects with different versions. It would just create a much bigger pain than it's worth. So after you install Architect Workflows, just run npx help, and this menu will come up, and these are literally all the commands that you can run. Otherwise, everything else in here is the same. All this stuff works the same as you would expect. It's viewsource.codes, and then we're looking at the intro to web part. There's like these two longer presentations that come first. I decided to not do them because they're boring, and they try and convince you that Amazon's going to be around for a while, which I think we have now concluded is a foregone possibility. I wonder if I should just keep presenting. Should I just keep going? I want to see people get stuff built, though.
Just before I continue with this,
yeah. The question was, how complex of an app can you build with a whole bunch of tiny little functions? And I haven't found the upper bound on this one yet. So this is begin.com. This app deploys Arc apps. And so I'm going to hit create, create app. And this is going to generate a repo in my GitHub. And it's going to deploy a staging and a production environment. Oh, look at that. I already got production up. And looks like staging's up. And the GitHub repo is up. And this should kick off a build here within like a few seconds. And this will deploy that Arc app automatically, so you don't have to use AWS Console. So this is what you're looking at right now. Pretty complex app. And it's clocking in currently at 323 Lambda functions. And to deploy this app takes us about a minute. With zero downtime. And it's Lambda, so it's infinitely scalable, blah, blah, blah. We don't have to worry about any of that other stuff. So this is the most complex thing I've built with it so far. Which is pretty complex. It's got a lot. Got a lot going on.
Are those resources different than Lambda?
So that there is no server here whatsoever. Actually, I'll show you the Arc file. So this is another weird thing, and this is new to me. If you've worked with things like Terraform or, CloudFormation, sure, that's a good example. Those files, those YAML files, or the like HCL files, those are read-only or write-only. You're never reading that and knowing what your app does. So this is the Arc file for begin.com. It's got a domain, begin.com. It's got AWS cred set up internally. We got a couple of Lambdas for JavaScript functions. We have one Lambda serving CSS. Actually, this is also fun. The front-end devs in the house would probably be really interested to see how we built this. So we have two Lambda functions serving JavaScript. And check out my network tab. I just threw about 80 naked ES modules in parallel at the front end. They're not even minified. And it loads in under 2 seconds. We're not using Webpack. We're not bundling. We're just serving that shit super fast from one Lambda function. So the Lambda function that serves this front end reads it off the node file system. Like, you won't even believe me when I show this to you. You're going to be like, what are you doing? But it works, and it works really well. So we have this vendor one. And check out what vendor does. It reads into my node modules, and it returns preact, like as JavaScript from a Lambda function, like right away, and caches it. This fs.readFileSync is horribly inefficient. It takes almost 40 milliseconds. And then after that, it's like no time because it's in memory. This is the front end. And you can see we've got a lot of tiny modules. Whoa, that's weird. They're all being served by reading them out of a ledger. That ledger is out of scope right here. And if it's in the ledger, we return it. If it's not, we read it using read file sync. Yeah. It seems like it would be crazy, doesn't it? But it's incredibly efficient and fast and a lot less complicated than...
But you could run a Webpack.
You could. Yeah, if I wanted to slow it down and make it more inefficient, we could add Webpack. Absolutely. There's nothing stop. And so we have done things like run Babel, or there's a project out there that I'm writing a plugin for right now called Sucrase, if you've heard of this. So Sucrase transpiles TypeScript flow and JSX, but it's like 5 times faster than Babel. So you could run it in process and just have it in your Lambda function automatically transpiling on the way out, if that was a property that you wanted to have in your application architecture, which I think is debatable. But everyone's got their thing. Yeah. So where the hell did I put it? Oh yeah. So that's how that front end part works. But if you look at the arc file for this, this is the point I was trying to make, not to harp on front end dev too much. It asks for it. So these are the SNS lambdas that make that CI system work. Each one of these rows turns into 2 SNS events, one for production, one for staging, and 2 Lambda functions. These are SQSQ lambdas for things that we need to have happen in a particular order. And then here's our, HTML routes. And then we have an API, obviously, so that's right here. And the neat thing about this, we have a backups running as a cron job Lambda right here. So you don't know a whole lot about what begin is or how it works, but you actually now have a very good idea about how to even debug it and how it's been built. You don't get that property from a lot of other manifest files, which is kind of neat. Yeah, we're really happy with it as far as how far it can scale. I kind of want to show you guys the new one. I'm going to show you something really weird. So we don't have a ton of time, and I kind of want to show this. So people get freaked out by the content first thing, and we're working on fixing that. So I'm going to jump into this thing called test HTTP2. I'm going to touch an arc file. I'm going to npm init. I'm going to npm install. But I'm going to npm install my development version of Arc Workflows. This isn't public yet, but I feel like you're ready for it. I feel like you want to see this. So I'm going to call this, I don't know, I love cats. And so one problem, or not problem, but one aspect of API Gateway is all the setup has to be static. And so in the very beginning of API Gateway, if I wanted to serve text HTML, I had to tell it that up front for those routes, which is why we ended up with this legacy of having these content types in our manifest file, like this or this. Recently, they gave me the ability to do dynamic content types, and that's kind of changing how we're thinking of things. So I don't know, whatever. So we're calling this HTTP, and these are dependency-free Lambda functions. And these are actually faster to generate because not everything is being thought up front, and it's a little bit better. So we haven't documented this yet, so this is actually not super helpful for everyone, practically speaking, but it's something you can know that's coming down the pipe really soon. Which will let you do these. You could change content type dynamically, you could change status dynamically, and you could still access session if you want it, but you don't have to use it. And so it's just a little bit faster, and it's just naked Lambda signatures, as I'll show you in a half second here. I get pretty unreasonably excited about this stuff. This has been a totally different way for writing software for me. In the past, it was, compile a big server, ship that big server, watch it slowly roll over from one instance to the next until it finally completed a deploy, and someone finds a bug. And then we'd start that process all over again, watching these things roll over. In this world, we're like doing these fast, tight little surgical iterations, and the code just it's just the code. It's not. I'm not looking at. And I find like a lot of like servery code ends up looking like NASCAR. It's like it's just got like logos all over it, and it's everybody else's opinion. So this is kind of where we've always been aiming to get. So this is a text HTML Lambda function. It's going to return a status of 202. And for fun, we'll turn on cores, which with Lambda used to be a real pain. We'll deploy that. These things are small, too. So they deploy pretty quick, as you can see. Great. So that's kind of neat, but whatever. We're just saying hi. That's not really all that special. Why don't we make this thing return text XML? Oops. Okay. Deploy that. Oh. Am I looking at the right thing? I don't think I am. Oh my God, that's so funny. Where's the URL's not printing? It's something to do with my resolution. This is also new code, I swear. Wait a second. I just realized I've been iterating on get food this whole time, which I think is here. Yeah, and there's my bad XML. That's so funny. Well, it shows you anyways. So this is the new method signature. It's way smaller, right? And there's no dependencies whatsoever. And you could opt in to using the session state if you wanted to. And you could do dynamic content types, turn cores on and off, use all those HTTP status codes that you want. Original Lambda, you had to define these all up front, which created quite a bit of overhead in the configuration. The new one will look more like this. Okay, maybe we should keep going. Does anyone? How'd you do? Did you set stuff up? Yeah? Cool. Did anyone get stuck on anything really weird? Yeah?
The name, the app name, limits you at 10 characters.
It does.
And the app name on the tutorial on the site is more than 10 characters.
I'm so sorry. Yeah, we changed that a while ago. I apologize for that out-of-date doc. That's bad. All right. Let me get down to this. What I was going to show you next was database stuff. Do you want to do database stuff, or do you care? Yeah? Okay. All right, if it's something you're interested in, we'll do it. So that was the big begin one. I think this is it. Yeah, okay, so this is our counter workshop thing. I guess like the next step for me would be to add some kind of login here, some kind of like OAuth step, so that you were like, not just barging in and doing anything, dangerous. Not going to go through the whole process of setting up OAuth, but I will add a login. So we'll run MPX create. This is going to generate one post login route, which we'll use to secure our database. Obviously, you'd want to do something more robust than what I'm about to do. We're not going to build like a full-fledged user management system right now. Sometimes people say, oh, you should use Cognito for that, or you should use Firebase for that. I think that's fine. You can use those things. I think when people say that and they say it's going to save time, I don't think they're thinking of integration cost either. So yes, those things are user management systems, but they do not come for free. they definitely come with an integration cost, and you do get stuck on those things forever. So you're free to implement whichever system makes sense to you for your needs. Arc just gives you a cheap session to do it, and that's basically it. So you'll notice I commented out a few of these lines just to make the create a little faster. It's pretty normal. So post login, I'm going to do the most insecure thing ever here. Request.body.email equals brian@begin.com. So, you'd probably want to add a password to this. But this is just for demonstration purposes. OK, so all this will do is it'll look for an email, and if that email is mine, you're logged in. Low-grade security. But this is demo code, not anything else. OK, so form action equals method equals post. I guess login. Form. And just to make it easy, OK, let's see if that works. When your resolution is normal, it doesn't do that. I think, anyways, it shouldn't. OK, we're not logged in. Brian@begin.com. Hey, we're logged in. That's funny. We also cleared out our session there. Good enough. Let's add a protected route of some kind. So, I don't know. PHP myadmin. Be fine. Oh. I thought that was funny. All right. Just seeing who's still paying attention. So we're going to create this admin route, which will come with a couple of Lambda functions. And we'll deploy them. And meanwhile, over here, I'm just going to delete stuff from this other one that I built. So we'll add a bit of middleware to protect this endpoint, and then we'll just create a quick couple of database tables to CRUD that endpoint. Database tables are really fast to generate with Arc, and it's pretty easy to get your schema wrong with DynamoDB. So it's the kind of thing that you sort of end up experimenting with, I think. I'm just going to like cats, and I don't know. We'll give it one key, cat ID. And that's probably good enough for now. I'm also going to add classic sort of API. Let's see. How about get API cats, post API cats. We could do put, patch, delete, all the rest of it. It's kind of a pain to do, though, honestly, especially from an HTML form. You end up wanting to recreate these things twice. I'm going to purposely put a typo up there and run MPX create again. And this is going to generate database tables and API endpoints for our cats CRUD API. And you can also create indexes too. But it's also something you want to watch out for with DynamoDB. An index is a full copy of your database table. So whatever your table costs, times it by however many indexes you have. So it gets out of hand real fast. Amazon recommends lots of indexes. I've noticed. I try and actually have more tables with less indexes. So I think it can be a little more efficient, but it just depends on how you want to slice up your app. You definitely don't want to think of DynamoDB as a relational database. It's something not that. It's like a document database. Oh, so this is actually good. This is what you want to see. I know it doesn't seem like it, but this is your opportunity to give Amazon more of your money. It's pretty common, honestly. The cloud has retries. It's nothing to be ashamed of. It's very normal. You do have to wait a few seconds, though. You can't just. The solution to being throttled is not to rerun it as fast as possible, it turns out. Yeah. This just means that you're working faster than Amazon can handle. Parts of this probably did actually already get set up, though, which is sort of a nice thing. Get API cats, post API cats. Let's. What region was I in? I was in US East 1. So let's go to my AWS console and take a look at that, just for fun. So we're in West 1 right now. Let's change over to East 1. API gateway. You can see my billions of experiments. What was this thing called? Workshop. I thought you were taking a picture of my console page. Okay, so workshop staging. Here's our API. You can see get and post. It kind of like has slowly evolved. If you were wondering under the hood what Arc was doing, it's setting up this. And so like when we set up an API gateway endpoint, we have to set up an integration request, which is all the details about a Lambda. And you'd be forgiven if you never figured this out because it would take a while. These are what are called mapping templates. These create your get, your request. If we zoom out from the method execution, you have these integration responses. You have to configure every one of these HTTP endpoint statuses individually. And each one of those comes with its own special set of mapping templates hidden in all of these weird places. So the nice thing about Arc is you don't think about any of that stuff anymore. You just build your app. Okay, so it looked like it got the two APIs set up, but we're just going to rerun deploy one more time, or create one more time, just to make sure that it got everything. So again, it won't create something if it isn't already created. It'll just skip it. So this can take a few seconds, but this will ensure that everything's in sync with the Arc file that we've got locally.
Is API gateway per ARC file?
It creates 2 per Arc file, 1 for staging, 1 for production. They had a built-in concept for doing stages, but it was really not good. It's like they call them like aliases or something like that, and the symmetry was too hard. And when we thought about it objectively, we're like, these things are free. Like API gateway costs nothing if it's not being used. So we could have like teased apart all their weird APIs to do like multiple environments, or we could just create 2 API gateway instances. It seemed cheaper and easier to do that. Okay, sweet. So no more throttling. We're back over here. So we've got our admin page. Let's secure that. And so we'll do that with some middleware. Allowed. And so if request.session.loggedin, we'll just allow the next middleware to advance. Otherwise, we'll send you back home. And we'll add an environment or a query string variable so we know that that happened. OK, we'll deploy that. Oh. This progress bar looks a lot better when it doesn't do this. But it does give you a good sense of how fast we can deploy these functions. OK, so logged in true still. In theory, if I go to admin, it'll just show me like hello world. Great. Allowed is not defined. That's funny. I spelled allowed wrong. So you also don't have to deploy all the functions. You can just give it a path to one, and it'll just deploy that one function. And I call that surgical deploys. To my knowledge, Arc's the only thing that can do that. OK, so we're allowed in our admin. We're logged in. We're not getting booted out. We can test that by nuking our session. And we can nuke our session by going to this post clear route, which you can see resets the session. So if I go to home, I click clear, we're no longer logged in. I go to admin, and it redirected me back here, and we can see it shows login fail, which is cool. Great. So let's interact with the database. When we ran Arc there, we created a table called cats, I think. And that would have been scoped by workshop. So there should be down here workshop staging cats. There it is. So here's our DynamoDB table ready to go. So I'm going to go to our admin page. We're starting to get a lot of Lambdas here for our front end, so it's probably time to add a shared layout. So I'm just going to quickly do that. OK. OK, so this shared folder gets copied into all the other folders while it's running. And so, or right before deploy, rather. I'll just put this here, layout. Great. Now if we look back at this admin page, I'm going to delete this, get rid of this hello world text. Oops, it's body, and let body equals, I'll put a form in here. Action equals. It was API cats, right? I swear we're going to get into doing some database stuff any second now. A lot of setup. I guess we'll give our cat a name. And we should probably give the cat a superpower. Oops. So it's like cat can fly, cat can hide. tech, attack. Am I like meme dating myself right now? Name equals superpower. And okay, so that should render this form in the body of that layout. We'll deploy that. Sweet. Let's take a look. We gotta log in, I guess. Okay, we're logged in. Let's go to the admin page. Oh, our layout's not defined. Right. All right. So we used to copy it in directly into the folder, but that created collaborating problems. So we copied into architect shared. So everything in source shared gets copied into architect shared, and you don't have to worry about it collaborating anything weird. I'll deploy that. One thing to watch out for is that shared folder does get copied into all your Lambda functions. And if it gets big, then you bloat all your Lambda functions in parallel. So you have to watch out for that. That's why we print this over here. The rule of thumb, sub 5 megabyte Lambda, sub-second cold start. As soon as you go over 5 megabytes, your cold starts go over 1 second. And that's when customers get mad. And pinging Lambda functions does not make them faster. It just hides the probability of seeing problems. Cool. So we got our layout, and we have like our crummy little form with our cat superpowers. We probably want to print out any cats that are in our database. And so Arc has a helper library for talking to Dynamo. It's called data. It comes installed in every function. Sometimes people will say like, "Oh, this seems like heavyweight, and there's a lot of stuff here," you know, because it does seem like that from this API. The Arc data library, I think, is like less than 5 kilobytes, and Arc functions is 20 kilobytes. So these are really thin shims. They're not. This is not a heavy framework. This is pretty much close to naked Dynamo as you can get. Okay. I've grown accepting of async await. I'm not a big fan of it, but it does make code a little terser. So we can do things like this, data.cats.scan. This will get me, well, I'll show you what it gets you. We'll add an HR here for adding cats, and then for now, we'll just JSON stringify the results. And we'll put it in a pre tag so that it's kind of tidy or easier to read. Does that make sense? So data is pulled out of this scope. It's going to read the Arc file and infer the table names based on the node environment, and then it returns a promiseified client so we can do fancy stuff like this. So MPX Deploy, source, HTML, get admin. So this should show us the form and an empty query. Great. So we don't have anything in our databases. This is what we expected to happen. Let's write to the database. So this form is posting to API cats. Which actually, I'm not sure if this is going to work. It's posting to a place that expects JSON, but let's give it a try. Well, let's see. Actually, we could just try it over here. I should just redirect home. Post API. That's funny. Yeah, I think that works. It returned it as a get. That's not what I want to do. Oh yeah, so there we go. So if this works, I want to redirect back to admin, I think. So and we're going to need arc data to write. Result equals await data.cats.put body. And then we just redirect. We could add middleware for verifying, but actually, we don't even give a shit about the result, really, do we? Yeah, I think that's it. Cool. Right. I think I know the problem. So I'm doing an HTML post right now, and it's not correctly decoding it for this route. So if we really want to do this right, we would be using fetch, and we would be doing a content type post with the body as a JSON encoded value, which I don't want to get into doing right now. So we will add post cats just to make this easier and faster for all of us. Great. So this is kind of an interesting thing. I think as systems have matured, we've walked back from doing typical content type form encoded posts and gets. They're not as common. We're doing more JSON wrangling from front ends. Don't think it's good or bad, it just is what it is. These are different things. So in ArcLand, these functions are handled by different functions. The future version of Arc, I could see handling multiple content types from a single function. But again, the bigger these functions get, the more your cold starts get worse. And the worse your cold starts get, the less reliable your application is as a whole. So you want these, oh, come on. You want these things to be as small as possible. That's brutal. I'm just beating up on it too much. OK, post cats did create me a Lambda. I'm going to steal it from get API, or from post API cats. Effectively, it's just this. Actually, this. After we do this database thing, I should probably show you how to do a scheduled function. And then if we get time, a background task function. So scheduled functions, you give it effectively an interval, and it will execute that function on that interval. So if you want it to run every 5 minutes, or 1 minute, or every day. And they are kind of the gateway drug. It's where I got really excited about Lambda, was getting rid of cron jobs. OK, so postcats apparently is up there, but let's just do a deploy. I like how the progress meter worked that time for no reason at all. That's awesome. Something else that I just realized, we will want to modify where this posts to. So this just posts to cats now, which is OK. I'll just deploy that one function. 9 seconds for those other ones, 2 for the one. It's kind of annoying. It's usually a little more uniform. OK, so, oh no. Cannot read property slice of undefined. What have I done? What did I do? What changed? Try a fresh deploy. But I've been tempting fate with the demo gods too much. They're like, we'll fix your scroll bar and break everything else. Oh, what is undefined? No. I have no idea. That's all I changed, right? Oh, I think I know. I commented out these things. That's what it was. Does use the arc file at runtime. That's why. There we go. Great. But I want to go back and show those cats. Data.cats.scan. Scan reads all the rows, so it's kind of not a great thing to do. You want to write a query normally, but you can read up how to do that. Okay. You get a sense of the iteration speed thing as you see this ripping through various versions. Great. And almost. So we posted here. We used a wait inside of an illegal place. I didn't beat it. There it goes. Ah, yeah, cat ID. Sweet. That's good. That's a good error. We wanted that. We have to give our cat an ID. There's a lot of ways to do this. DynamoDB does not give you auto-incrementing keys. It does have a thing called auto-incrementing or atomic updates of properties, so you can create your own primary key. I am going to create, let's see, cat equals request.body, cat.catid equals date.now. This is not going to scale. It'll also want this to be a string, so don't judge me. But this will work for now. So go to our admin. See, we have nothing in here. We're waiting for this slow deploy. 10 seconds. Brutal. And there we go. We have a row in our database. Yay. Or hey. No, not she. We protect. I think you get the idea. So Dynamo's fast. I don't know if you noticed, we just did a lot of what apparently looked like a lot of operations, but Dynamo's really quick. And the other thing that I super love about Dynamo is that it's you choose how much. So if you need to make it faster, that's a function of your credit card. It's no longer no matter how many DBAs you throw at the tire fire and Like the fire gets bigger, so you just need bigger bodies to throw on that fire. And no more of that. Now if you want to scale, it's just like a cost of the business, which is different than things used to be. So we can keep going on this database interaction stuff. If you look in the Dynamo console now, we'll see that we've got some rows in here, which is kind of neat. Dynamo also expires keys. So if we wanted to, we could add a time to live and have things go away, which gives us patterns like Redis. Under the hood, Arc actually uses Dynamo for its sessions, just to give you a sense of like how good the speed is for this thing. We are really opinionated in that we think that you want separate databases for staging and production. So there's a wholly different table for these two environments, so you can feel safe about reading and writing out of these places. And locally, we set this up as an in-memory database. So if you run MPX Sandbox, this will mount, this should have mounted all of our routes. That's funny. Bad demo. It isn't an async function, I thought. Did I not save that? Async await stuff is pretty new. Clearly, we have a bug with that. Oh, I know where that is. That's in the JSON route that we're not using anymore. Wow, an async await error that was useful. Let's hope for it after all. So we can mount this locally. One of the things Arc does is it reads that Arc file locally, and it starts a thing called Dynalite, and it initiates Dynalite with tables. So you have an in-memory database representation of everything that we're doing here. So if I go to localhost, not only does my session work, but I can log in here. Oh, in theory, I could log in here. And now I can go to, whoops. This might read my casual reading about semantic commit messages. Go to my thing. We can save cats over here as much as we want and work locally. None of this is hitting a database. But we can also run our tests locally and in memory. We can pop up mocks running locally and in memory. This turns out to be really nice because now our test suite runs really fucking fast, and our local environment is also really fast. And having the separation of these realities is really nice from a development workflow perspective. It isn't any longer like, oh, check my checklist of like the quirks between staging production in my local dev environment, and then accidentally, flail a deploy to one of those places. This is like strongly gated between these environments. So I wanted to show you, we've got like 20 minutes left. And I wanted to show you scheduled functions really quick. We could keep fleshing this out with CRUD methods, but it's all documented. So if you've worked with databases in the past, it's kind of like that. And I want to show you scheduled functions because I feel like they're really important and a bit weird. I don't know, what are we going to say? So we're going to be stoked every minute. I wish, right? And I'm just going to quickly make these non-issues for the create. I'll run MPX create. So when it finds a section it doesn't know about, it just ignores it when you run create. So it's kind of a hack to make it run faster. We are now looking at scheduled. That just did it. Save this. So in our file system now, we've got a scheduled function. So these are really simple functions. They, once they're wired, they just do their thing. And this is a really easy way to accidentally like run up your Amazon bill. So we're gonna look at this, but we're gonna have to turn it off pretty quick. So, hey, this does eventually cost money. So I had a function that was doing a background job for us for like 6 months, and we were like, wow, we sure get a lot of Lambda executions. And then we figured it out. We're like, oh, it's all us. running the same function over and over again. I had a lot of backups. These are good for all kinds of things, though. You could imagine something that's like pre-compiling your app, thing that is pulling data out of DynamoDB and dumping it into S3, so you can use S3 select. You can imagine, there's all kinds of use cases. So it'll be the last modified one here in workshop, get API cats. Stoked, there it is. So to set these things up manually is not too bad. Effectively, it's adding this weird box, which is somehow global nav. And when you click on it, it creates this, which you can see is running every minute. And it's enabled. This is a really important piece of UI for when things get out of hand. So you can come in here and you can disable a Lambda function, but they sort of hide that, just so you know that you have this ability. If we click on monitoring, it'll give us a bunch of empty graphs, which are useless, but they look kind of neat. And if you click on the far right where it says View Logs and CloudWatch, we can see that our Lambda executions have been running in the background, quietly logging away. And this will just keep going forever. And you have a full 5 minutes to do whatever damage you can do to your credit card. So this is kind of amazing. This is massive gateway drug like potential. What thing can you do on a schedule for yourself? And as long as you keep that under 1 million executions a month, it's free. Every subsequent 1 million executions will cost you 10 cents. So if you have this function run 10 million times, it'll cost you a beer, which is pretty good for compute, depending on what you're up to. It doesn't really give you much good information, but one thing to note, less scheduled functions run in UTC time. So if you're using them to generate notifications to someone, you're going to want to bring in a library like that isn't Moment, any library that can do date time. And the reason you don't want to use something like Moment, you maybe want to use the new one. I know they have a refactor, but you only have 5 megabytes to get past the cold start. And so if you have slow cold starts with a function that's running on a regular interval, it can bite you. So you want to have the smallest possible payload here, or else your date time math will be weird. And it'll be like, I want to send everyone a notification at 9 in the morning, and they'll start getting them at like 9:03, and you'll be like, why? So you want to figure that out pretty early. So that's scheduled functions. For completeness, I might as well show you evented functions. So these are, these are SNS events. And you can think of them as background tasks. These are pretty powerful. So anything you would have used a queue for, or a thing running in a background, long-running task, like something that, in our case, we use them all the time. Like it's a CI/CD system, so we use the events for like, after we do some work in the background to notify the user. There's a million reasons to have a background task, and this just makes it so simple. So that puts it under events. It looks like this, so there's not much to it. We're just going to log when we get called. And I'm going to add, every time we increment that counter, we'll also dispatch an SNS event, just to be cheeky, just to have fun. So let's do it in some middleware function. Well, I don't know. We can call this metrics, maybe. So this has an older school callbacky interface. And if this offends your sensibilities, sorry. We will add an async await one eventually. Okay, so we're going to publish an event. Whoops. Events all have a name and a payload. And the name in our case is background. So background. Arc will automatically disambiguate it. And we'll send it a payload that's weird. All right. So metrics is going to run. And then we're going to increment, and we'll continue. Seems reasonable. So we'll deploy that whole thing. Our app is now growing sophisticated. We have metrics. Okay, 10 lambdas. 14 seconds, that's brutal. So that's running locally. Let's go to staging. We'll go here. You can see we're logged in, but we've got 0, whatever. Oh, workshop staging not found. Well, that's not cool. I wonder why. Did I run MPX create? Whoa. What the hell? Oh, that's good. It's like I've been mocking the demo gods my whole presentation, and they're just gonna make me pay for it at the very end. No. This can't be my terminal now. That's amazing. That's why, okay. It's going through the scheduled ones. Oh, it's going through JSON ones. This will take a moment. And it's all like frozen and stuck. Fuck you, demo gremlins. You're not going to win today. While that runs, go back here. That looks okay. Oh, it's like it's stuck. Wow. What have I done? Sweet. Sorry. I don't know why I'm doing that. I guess I could open a new terminal. Oh, that's so funny. And will this one be normal? Oh, shoot. I got that new Mac with the broken keyboard and horrible touch bar. And yeah, I really don't like it. What did I call this thing again? Does anybody remember what this was called? Yeah, maybe that's it. Arc Workshop, you're right. Okay. Sorry about the preview of inside of my mind on my desktop there. Don't look too carefully. Okay, so this is still doing its thing. Why don't we check on its progress manually? We'll see. Do we have a? So we have a staging stoked. But do we have a background yet? Workshop staging background. We do. And if we go here and we pop the designer, we can see it is wired to SNS. So it probably already actually got to it. I'm going to guess. Let's see if we can one up now. No, it didn't. Workshop staging starting background. Whoops. No. List topics. According to this, I do have one. phone subscription. Endpoint. Yeah, I think that's right. One out. Topic. So weird. Horrible demo. I'm super sorry. I don't know why that's not working. I'm certain I've done something silly. Events background. HTML count. Workshops, data and background. Oh, nice. Okay, let's try that now. Fresh deploy. Still thinks it's logged in. No, can't find it. Well, I'm sorry, that was a really bad demo. I don't know what I've done. Events are cool when they do work. Why that one isn't registering, I don't know. Workshop staging background. I bet we could manually publish this, but I don't want to go in and do the whole thing. Maybe I do. Well, I think that we'll leave it on that low note. I tempted the demo gods too long. And this is a good point to like throw out my caution slide. So this is new stuff. Now it's under development. There is an issue tracker. You can go check it out at arc.codes. Some of these things need to be solved with patience. So there are vendors out there claiming that they have multi-cloud functions. I don't think that that's possible right now, personally. I haven't really seen implementations of this happen yet. I think that will happen in the future, but Amazon's got a big head start. And my tale of caution goes back to 2007 when I was working on early versions of what eventually would become the PhoneGap project. I can remember being 100% certain that BlackBerry was the future of mobile. And so when I look at people talking about multi-cloud, it sure sounds a lot more familiar to me than the early days. So I know that Amazon is a safe bet. I can't say the same for the rest of them. I think you can choose to be fast by default by writing lots of small functions, as you saw. I also think that we need to be a little bit better to each other about this stuff. Just because there's no servers or there is containers doesn't really matter. There's lots of ways to skin a cat, lots of ways to build apps. This is just a way. This isn't the way. But I do think this is one of the fastest ways. We like pull requests. We really appreciate bug reports. Oh my God, someone the other day said to me that they didn't want to report a bug because they didn't want to make us mad. And I was like, no, please tell us about the bugs. It won't make us mad. We really appreciate it. We also appreciate feature requests. And we really, really appreciate when people get stoked about Arc and talk about it online. Yeah, that's about it. If you are interested in learning more, start us on GitHub. I'm always hanging out on Twitter, and I'm local to Vancouver, so if you want me to get together for a coffee and help you work through any problems with this stuff, I'm happy to do it. Yeah. Thanks for coming. Yeah. I'm chilling. We can do like questions stuff. We're perilously close to 420, and I know that that's an important time for Vancouverites. Oh shit, there's actually questions. Sure, go ahead.
What's the default Lambda configuration?
By default, we make you use Node 810, 1152 RAM, and 3-second timeout. Yeah. And I'm up for changing those, actually. The bigger Lambdas tend to cold start faster. So if you add more memory, they run quicker. But we didn't want to like default you at the fastest, so we just picked 10 or 1152, kind of randomly. Yeah.
Can you endorse a debugging engine if you're used to being able to see everything in the browser?
Yeah, people do use debuggers for this. I don't know how. I've never used a debugger with Node personally. I write tests to do it, but I'm not saying that one's better than the other. I know it's possible to use Node debugger because when we run this thing locally with Sandbox, it just starts it as a regular vanilla Node server. So whatever process you'd use to debug a vanilla Node server would work here. I should figure out how to do that. I can't imagine it's that hard. Any other questions? All right, sweet. Free drinks. Let's do this. Thanks, everybody.